Chapter 2. Guy, sitting on the edge of the window bench, polished the cockade on the beret with his collar and watched Corporal Werabob issue him travel documents. The corporal's head was tilted to one side, his eyes were staring, his left hand was lying on the table, holding the red bordered form, and his right hand slowly drew out calligraphic letters. He's doing great, Guy thought with some envy. What an old ink crap, 20 years in the Guard, and everyone is a clerk. Wow, he's staring. The team's pride. Now he'll even stick his legs out. That's right, he stuck it out. And his tongue's in ink. Be healthy, Worry-Bobu, you're an old inkwell, I'll never see you again. Actually, it's kind of sad to leave, the guys are good, and gentlemen, officers, and the service is useful and significant. Guy sniffed his nose and looked out the window. Outside the window, the wind carried white dust along a wide, smooth street with no sidewalks, lined with old hexagonal plates. The walls of the long identical houses of administration and engineering staff turned white, and Mrs. Idoia, a fat and representative lady, a courageous woman who was not afraid to follow Mr. Brigadier to these dangerous places with her children. A novice sentry at the commandant's office, wearing an uncrumpled anther and a beret stretched over her ears, put her on guard. Then 2 trucks drove by with people who must be vaccinated. So it's up to his neck, don't lean overboard, you don't have to stick it out, this is not a boulevard for you. How do you spell after all? Werabob asked. Gaal? Or can we just, Gal? No way, Guy said. Gaal is my last name. It's a shame, said Werabob, sucking on his pen thoughtfully. If it were possible, Gal would just fit into the line. Right, inkwell, Guy thought. You don't have to save lines. The name of a corporal is. The buttons are covered with greenery, and a corporal is also for me. You've won 2 medals, but you haven't really learned how to shoot, everyone knows that. The door opened, and Mr. Captain Toot quickly entered the office with a gold bandage on his sleeve. Guy jumped up and snapped his heels. The corporal raised his butt but didn't stop writing, old damn thing. The name of a corporal is. Yeah, said Mr. Captain, peeling off his dust mask in disgust. Private Gaal. I know, leave us. It's a shame. But I'm happy. I hope you will serve as hard in the capital. That's right, Mr. Captain, Guy said excitedly. He even had a pinch in his nose with enthusiasm. He was very fond of Mr. Captain Toot, a cultural officer and former high school teacher. It turns out that Mr. Captain also distinguished him. You may sit down, said Mr. Captain, walking over the barrier to his table. Without sitting down, he glanced through the papers and took up his phone. Guy tactfully turned to the window. Nothing has changed on the street. My dear corporal was in formation for lunch. Guy looked at him sadly. When they come to the cantina now, Corporal Sarambesh will command them to take off their berets for the word of thanks. The guys bark 30 sips of thanks, and steam is already rising above the pots and the bowls are shining, and old dog is ready to soak his famous soldier and cook. By God, it's a shame to leave. And it's dangerous to serve here, and the climate is unhealthy, and the rations are very monotonous, only canned food, but still. Here, at least, you know exactly what you need, that you're indispensable. Here you take ominous pressure from the south on your chest and feel this pressure. You've buried some friends here, there's a whole grove of Poles with rusty helmets outside the village. On the other hand, it is the capital. They won't send anyone there, and since they send them, don't rest. They say that you can see all the parade grounds from the Palace of the Fathers, so one of the fathers is sure to watch every formation. That is, not necessarily, but no, and he will look at it. Guy had a fever, out of the blue. He suddenly imagined that he had been called out of action, and at the second step he slipped and blurted his nose under the commander's feet, rattled his gun on the paving stones, gaping him open, and took it to an unknown location. He took a break and looked around in secret. God forbid. Yes, the capital. It's all right in front of them. Well, that's all right, others serve. And there's Rada, sister, mom. A funny guy with his ancient bones, with his antediluvian turtles. Oh, and I miss you, my darlings. He looked out the window again and opened his mouth slightly puzzled. 2 people were walking down the street to the commandant's office. There was an acquaintance, the red-haired Hilo Zeph, one of the most dangerous, petty officer of the 144th Demining Squad, a suicide bomber who makes his living clearing the track. And the other one was, well, a perfect scarecrow, and a creepy scarecrow. At first, Guy mistook him for a geek, but he immediately realized that it was unlikely that Zeph would drag the geek to the commandant's office. A hefty naked guy, young, all brown, as healthy as a bull, he only wears some short briefs made of shiny fabric. Zeph was carrying his gun, but it didn't look like he was escorting the stranger. They walked side by side, and the stranger, waving his arms ridiculously, kept explaining something to Zeph. Zeph, on the other hand, was just taking a break and looked completely fooled. Some kind of savage, Guy thought. But where did it come from, on the highway? Maybe raised by bears? There have been such cases. And it looks like there are some muscles that shimmer. He watched the couple approach the sentry, how Zeph began to explain something as he wiped himself off, and the sentry was a novice. Zeph didn't know and was pointing a machine gun under the rib, apparently telling him to move within the required distance. A naked guy, seeing this, enters into a conversation. His hands are still flying, but his face is already strange. You can't catch the expression, like mercury, and his eyes are fast and dark. That's it, now the sentry is stunned. It will raise the alarm now. Guy turned around. Mr. Captain, he said, let me contact you. The petty officer of 134th brought someone there. Would you take a look at it? Mr. Captain went to the window, looked, and his eyebrows had popped out of his forehead. He pushed the frame, leaned out and shouted, choking on the bursting dust. Sentinel. Skip it. Guy closed the window when the hallway was flooded, and Zeph and his outlandish companion walked sideways into the office. Then, crowding them, the chief of the guard and two other guys from the waking shift fell in. Zeph stretched his arms at the seams, cleared his throat and, hatching shameless blue eyes on Mr. Captain, wheezed. Reports the foreman of the 134th Squad, educated Zeph. This man was detained on the highway. By all accounts, he is crazy, Mr. Captain. He eats poisonous mushrooms, doesn't understand a word, speaks incomprehensible, walks, as you please, naked. While Zeph was reporting, the detainee ran around the room with quick eyes, smiling creepily and strangely at everyone present. His teeth were straight and white as sugar. Mr. Captain, with his hands behind his back, came closer, looking at him from head to toe. Who are you? He asked. The detainee smiled even more eerily, knocked his hand on the chest and vaguely said something like Maxim. The chief of the guard gagged, the guards giggled, and Mr. Captain also smiled. Guy didn't immediately understand what was going on, and then he realized that in thieves' jargon, Maxim meant ate a knife. It appears to be one of your brother, Mr. Captain told Zeph. Zeph shook his head, throwing a cloud of dust out of his beard. Not at all, he said. Maxim is what he calls himself, but he doesn't understand thieves' language. So this isn't ours. I guess he's a geek, the chief of the guard suggested. Mr. Captain looked at him coldly. Naked. The chief of the guard explained soulfully, retreating for the door. May I go, Mr. Captain? He garked. Go on, said Mr. Captain. Send someone to pick up Mr. Zog's headquarters. Where did you catch him? He asked Zeph. Zeph reported that night he and his squad combed Square 2307, destroyed 4 self-propelled guns and 1 machine gun for unknown purpose, lost 2 in the explosion and everything was fine. At about 7 o'clock in the morning, this unknown person came to his fire along the highway from the forest. They spotted him from a distance, watched him, hiding in the bush, and then, at the right moment, took him. At first, Zeph mistook him for a fugitive, then decided he was not a fugitive, but a geek, and was about to shoot, but changed his mind, because this man. Then Zeph moved his beard in difficulty and concluded. Because it became clear to me that he was not a geek. How did this become clear to you? The captain asked, and the detainee stood still with his hands clasped on his mighty chest, looking at him and then at Zeph. Zeph said it would be hard to explain. First of all, this man was not afraid of anything and is not afraid of anything. Then he took the soup off the fire and ate exactly a third, as a friend should, and before that he shouted into the forest, apparently calling, feeling that we were somewhere nearby. Next, he wanted to treat us to mushrooms. The mushrooms were poisonous, and we didn't eat them and didn't give them to him, but he obviously tried to give us some food, apparently as a sign of gratitude. Next, as is well known, no geek is more physically capable than a normal frail person. This one drove me like a boy on the way here, walked through the windbreak as if out of the blue, jumped over the ditches, and then waited for me on the other side, and for some reason, out of daring, or something, he sometimes grabbed me in an armful and ran 200 or 300 steps with me. Mr. Captain listened to Zeph, pretending to be his deepest attention, but as soon as Zeph fell silent, he turned sharply to the detainee and barked point blank like a Conti. What is your name? Chin? An assignment? Guy admired his dexterity of reception, but the detainee clearly did not understand Conchin either. He showed his gorgeous teeth again, patted his chest and said, Maxim, pointed his finger at the man's side, said, Zeph, and then began to speak, slowly, with long pauses, pointing to the ceiling, then to the floor, then wrapping his arms around him. Guy thought he was picking up some familiar words in the speech, but these words had nothing to do with the point or each other. "Cover," said the detainee, and then, "Hurry Boers, curry Boers. Sure Fyak." When he fell silent, Corporal Werabob gave a voice. "I think he's a clever spy," the old inkwell said. "I should report to Mr. Brigadier." However, Mr. Captain did not pay attention to him. "You're good to go, Zeph," he said. "You've been eager, you'll count on it." "Thank you very much, Mr. Captain." Zeph barked and had already turned to go, but then the detainee suddenly made a soft cry, leaned over the barrier and grabbed the pack of blank forms on the corporal's desk. The old dick was scared to death, also a guardsman for me, recoiled and threw a pen at the savage. The savage cleverly caught his pen on the fly and, sitting right there on the barrier, began to draw something on the letterhead, ignoring Guy and Zeph, who grabbed him by the sides. "Put it aside," Mr. Captain commanded, and Guy willingly obeyed. Holding that brown bear was like trying to stop the tank by clutching a caterpillar. Mr. Captain and Zeph stood on the detainee's sides and watched what he was writing there. "I think this is a scheme of the world," Zeph said hesitantly. Said Mr. Captain. "Of course. It has the world light in its center, this is the world. And this is where he thinks we are." "But why is everything flat?" Mr. Captain asked in disbelief. Zeph shrugged his shoulders. "Perhaps a child's perception. Infantilism. Here, look at this. He's the one who shows how he got here." "Yes, maybe. I've heard that crazy." Guy finally managed to squeeze between the detainee's smooth, firm shoulder and Zeph's thorny red thickets. The drawing he saw seemed funny to him. "This is how first graders depict the world. In the middle there is a small circle meaning world light, around it there is a large circle denoting the world sphere, and on the circle there is a bold dot to which you can only draw arms and legs, and you get this is the world, and this is me." The unfortunate psycho could not even depict the world sphere with a regular circle, it turned out to be like an oval. Well, clearly, he's not normal. He also drew a dotted line leading out of the ground to a point. "This is how I got here." Meanwhile, the detainee took the second form and quickly drew two small spheres of peace in opposite corners, connected them with a dotted line and drew some more squiggles. Zeph whistled hopelessly and said to Mr. Captain, "May I go?" However, Mr. Captain did not let him go. Zeph," he said. "I remember you were striving in the field." He knocked his bent finger on the crown. "That's right," said Zeph hesitantly. Mr. Captain walked through the office. "Could you? How would you say that? Formulate your opinion about this subject? Professional, so to speak." "I can't know," Zeph said. "According to the verdict, I don't have the right to act in a professional capacity." "I understand," Mr. Captain said. "That's all right. I praise you. But..." Zeph rolled out his blue eyes and stood at attention. Mr. Captain, on the other hand, was obviously confused. Guy understood him well. It was an important and national case. Maybe this savage is a spy after all, and Mr. Chief Physician Zogu is, of course, an excellent guardsman, a brilliant guardsman, but he is only a staff physician. At the same time, red-haired Hilo Zeph knew his stuff very well before he got into crime and was even a big celebrity. But it can also be understood. Everyone, even a criminal who has realized his crime, wants to live after all. And the law is merciless to suicide bombers, the slightest violation and the death penalty. On sight. There is no other way. This is the time when mercy turns into cruelty and only cruelty contains true mercy. The law is merciless but wise. "Well," said Mr. Captain. "There's nothing you can do about it. But humanly." He stopped in front of Zeph. "Do you understand? Not professionally, but humanly, do you really think this is crazy?" Zeph hesitated again. "Like a human being?" he repeated. "Well, of course, like a human being, it's human nature to make mistakes. So, as a human being, I am inclined to believe that this is a pronounced case of dual personality, with the repression and replacement of the true I by an imaginary me. As a human being, based on my life experience, I would recommend electric shock and fluo-containing drugs." Corporal Waribobu secretly recorded all this, but Mr. Captain can't be fooled. He took a sheet of notes from the corporal and put it in his jacket's pocket. Maxim spoke again, addressing Mr. Captain and then Zeph. He wanted something, poor man, something was wrong for him. But then the door opened and Mr. Staff Physician came in, apparently out of touch with lunch. "Hi Toot," he said obscenely. "What's up? I see you are alive and well, and this comforts me. What kind of guy is this?" "The students caught him in the forest," Mr. Captain explained. "I suspect he's crazy." "He's a simulator, not crazy," Mr. Staff Physician grumbled and filled himself with water from the carafe. Send him back to the forest and let him work. It's not ours, Mr. Captain objected. And we don't know where it came from. I think he was captured by geeks at the time. He went crazy and ran to us. That's right, Mr. Staff Physician grumbled. You have to go crazy to run over to us. He approached the detainee and immediately climbed to grab him by the ages. The detainee grinned terribly and pushed him away slightly. But, said Mr. Staff Physician, cleverly grabbing his ear. Stay calm, you stallion. The detainee complied. The general physician twisted his eyelids, whistled his neck and throat, bent and straightened his arm, then, puffing, leaned down and hit him under his knees, returned to the decanter and drank another glass of water. Heartburn, he said. Guy looked at Zeph. The red-bearded man, putting his gun to his foot, stood aside and looked at the wall with accentuated indifference. Mr. Staff Physician got drunk and took up the psycho again. He touched it, tapped it, looked into its teeth, punched it twice in the stomach, then took out a flat box from his pocket, unwound the wire, plugged it into an outlet and began to attach the box to different parts of the savage body. So, he said, winding the wire. And dumb too? No, said Mr. Captain. He speaks, but in a bear language, and only sometimes uses our words, and even then they are very distorted. He doesn't understand us. And here are his drawings. Mr. Staff Physician looked at the pictures. Well, he said. It's funny. He grabbed the corporal's pen and quickly drew a cat on the letterhead, as children draw it, out of sticks and circles. What do you think, buddy? He said, handing the picture to the psycho. He began to scratch with his pen without a second thought, and a strange animal, thickly overgrown with hair, appeared next to the cat with a heavy, unpleasant look. Guy did not know such an animal, but he understood one thing: it was no longer a children's drawing. The drawing was great, just great. It's a little scary to even watch. Mr. Staff Physician held out his hand by pen, but the psycho stepped back and drew another animal, already wild, with huge ears, wrinkled skin and a thick tail in place of its nose. Great! Mr. Staff Physician shouted, clapping himself on the sides. But the psycho didn't stop. Now he was no longer drawing an animal, but clearly some kind of apparatus that looked like a large transparent mine. Inside the mine, he very cleverly portrayed a man sitting, tapped the little man with his finger, and then tapped his chest with the same finger and said, Maxim. This is the thing he could see by the river, said Zeph, who came silently. We burned this one night. But here are the monsters. He shook his head. Mr. Staff Physician seems to have noticed him for the first time. Oh, Professor! He shouted with exaggerated joy. That's what I'm looking at. The office stinks of something. Would you be so kind, colleague, to pronounce your wise judgments from that corner? You would really oblige me too. Whereabob chuckled, and Mr. Captain said sternly. Stand at the door, Zeph, and don't forget. All right, said Mr. Staff Physician. And what do you think you'll do with it, Toot? It depends on your diagnosis, Zog, said Mr. Captain. If he's a simulant, I'll hand him over to the prosecutor's office, they'll figure it out. And if he's crazy? He's not a simulator, Toot. Mr. Chief Physician said with great enthusiasm. He has absolutely nothing to do in the prosecutor's office. But I do know one place where people would be very interested in him. Where is the foreman? Foreman on the track. However, this is not significant. You're on duty, right, Toot? So send this curious fellow to the following address. Mr. Staff Physician sat on the barrier, shrouded his shoulders and elbows from everyone, and wrote something on the back of the last drawing. And what is it? Mr. Captain asked. This? This is one institution that would thank us, Toot, for your psycho. I can vouch for you. Mr. Captain hesitantly twisted the form in his fingers, then went to the far corner of the office and lured Mr. Staff Physician to him. They spoke there in a low voice for some time, so that only a few of Mr. Zog's remarks could be read. The propaganda department. Send with a trusted. It's not so secret. I can guarantee you. Tell him to forget. Hell, the jerk won't understand anything anyway. All right, the captain finally said. Write the cover paper. Corporal Waribobu. The corporal raised his butt. Are the travel documents for Private Gaal Guard ready? That's right. Enter the escort Maxim in your travel documents. He is escorted without handcuffs. Travel in a shared carriage is allowed. Private Gaal. Guy clicked his heels and stretched out. I'm listening, Mr. Captain. Before arriving at a new duty station in our capital, take the detainee to the address indicated on this leaflet. Upon execution of the order, hand over the sheet to the duty officer at the new duty station. Forget the address. This is your last mission, Gaal, and you'll certainly complete it like a good guardsman. It will be performed, Guy shouted, overwhelmed with indescribable delight. A wave of joy, pride, happiness, a hot wave of excitement with devotion overwhelmed him, picked him up, carried him to heaven. Oh, these sweet moments of delight, unforgettable moments that shake the whole being, moments when wings grow, moments of gentle contempt for everything gross, material, physical. Minutes when you want fire and orders, when you want an order to connect you to fire, to throw you into the fire, at thousands of enemies, into open vents, against millions of bullets. And that's not all, it will be even sweeter, delight will dazzle and burn. Oh fire! Oh glory! Order, order! And this is it, he gets up, this tall, strong handsome man, the pride of the brigade, our Corporal Warabob, like a torch of fire, like a statue of fame and loyalty, and he sings, and we pick it all up, all is one. The battle guard walks with heavy steps, sweeping away fortresses, with fire in their eyes, sparkling with military orders, like drops of fresh blood sparkle on swords. And everyone was singing. The brilliant Mr. Captain Toot, an example of a guards officer, sang, a sample among the models for whom you would so much want to give your life, soul, everything for this march. And Mr. Zogu, the chief physician, is an example of a brother of mercy, as rude as a true soldier and gentle as a mother's hands. And our Corporal Warabob, down to the core, an old warrior, a veteran who turned grey in battles. Oh, how the war medals sparkle on his worn and well-deserved uniform, for him there is nothing but service, nothing but service. Do you know us, our unknown fathers? Raise your tired faces and look at us, because you see everything, so can't you see that we are here, on the brutal outskirts of our country, with delight and die in agony for the happiness of our motherland. Our iron fist sweeps away all obstacles. The unknown fathers are happy. Oh, how the enemy cries, but he has no mercy. Go ahead, let's go, well done guardsmen. Oh battle guard is the blade of law. Oh loyal brave guardsmen. When guards are fighting, the unknown fathers are calm. But what is it? He doesn't sing, he stands open, leaning on a barrier, turning his stupid brown head, and runs his eyes, and everything grins, everyone cheers. Who are you grinning at, you bastard? Oh, how I would like to approach it with a heavy step and on a grand scale, with a guard fist, at that vile white grin. But you can't, it's not like a guard, he's just a crazy man, a pathetic cripple, real happiness is beyond his reach, he's blind, insignificant, a miserable human fragment. And this red-haired bastard was crouching in the corner in unbearable pain. No, that's a different thing, you always have a headache when we're gasping for breath, singing our battle march and ready to tear our lungs apart but finish singing it to the end. A red-haired criminal face, a red-haired thug, for your chest, for your filthy beard. Get up, you bastard. Stand still as the guards sing their march. And on the head, on the dirty face, on the impudent crustacean eyes. That's it. Guy threw the man away and, snapping his heels, turned to Mr. Captain. As always, after a fit of excitement, something rang in my ears, and the world swayed sweetly and swayed before my eyes. Corporal Waribobu, bluish with exertion, faintly fainted as he clung to his chest. Mr. Staff Physician, sweaty and purple, greedily drank water straight from the carafe and pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket. Mr. Captain frowned with a missing expression, as if he were trying to remember something. At the doorstep, the red-haired Zeph was tossing and turning in a dirty pile of checkered rags. His face was broken, he was squishing blood and moaning faintly through his teeth. And Maxim didn't smile anymore. His face froze and looked just like an ordinary human face, and he looked at Guy with still round eyes as he opened his mouth. Private Gaal, Mr. Captain said in a cracked voice. Did I want to tell you something? Or did I already say something? Wait, Zogu, give me a sip of water.